Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and placemats are a lot of fun to make because they're like making miniature quilts. They're quick and easy, and they're easy to handle. And I have a very unique shape for a placemat, and that unique shape gives it a lot of different possibilities. The fabric has been sent to me by Annie's Creative Quilters Fabric Club. What it is a Fat Quarter of the Month club, where you would get a package of 6 fat quarters in the mail, and you get a free pattern that goes with that particular fabric bundle. So you have patterns that you can use with the bundles, and you can save these patterns and use them after. I'm going to be making the placemats for a nice summer table, and I'm going to use the Heavenly Hydrangeas. And I'm going to take this pattern and I'm going to put it aside for another project. The fabric has 2 of the floral prints with the hydrangeas on it. A nice dark blue, some greens, and a nice medium. We will need 6 fat quarters to make these placemats. I'm going to use my marking system that I like to use with my little pins. Each of these flathead floral pins, I've put the letter of the alphabet on so I can correspond my numbers with a pattern. I'll put a link in this description to the cutting directions for the fat quarters. Before I start, I do like to put the corresponding pins right in my paper pattern piece. As I cut, I take the pin out and I put it right there on that stack of fabric. So at a glance, I know that I have everything cut out. And as I'm sewing, I know what I'm sewing together. Some of these are going to be able to be cut 2 fat quarters together at the same time. And I have a little note that says place 2 fat quarters together and cut both the same. So I have 2 piles that are going to be cut together, and the other 2 are going to be just cut singular. The first page has a bit of a diagram on how the block is going to go together. And my lights are going to be cut from 2 different fat quarters, and I'm going to be cutting A, C, and H. So let's start with the very first page. The fat quarters need to be pressed. We're going to stack them on top of each other. Place both the fat quarters together so both sides are right side up. And I have the selvages I'm going to be able to trim off. Take off that selvage, and I'm going to be cutting both sides at the same time. With fat quarters, you have a longer side and a shorter side. So by keeping that in mind, you're going to be able to cut the fabric going in the right spot, and that's going to maximize the fat quarters. The first thing I need to cut is 16 of these H pieces, which are 2 inches by 13 inches. And because the fabric's double, I only need to cut 8 strips. That will give me my 16 pieces. Depending on the length of the fat quarter, you might be able to get your extra 2 inches on the end versus here. I was able to cut my 8 strips at 2 inches by 13 inches. Then the leftover, I was able to get my extra 2-inch squares, so I have this left over. I'm going to transfer my pins to my strips. So from the first 2 fat quarters put together, I have a total of 16 long strips, 2 inches by 13 inches, 8 of each color, 12 of both of the 2-inch squares for A and C. The next set, we're also going to do the same by cutting both together at the same time. And we're going to be cutting B and G. Same thing, press both those layers together. For G and B, I need to cut some big squares. Now these are just guidelines. Your fabric might be slightly different, so use the best layout that you can find. With those 6.5-inch squares, we need to cut them on the diagonal ones. And I like to do it even before I move my fabric. Now I can stack my fabrics together. I now have a total of 16 triangular pieces. On the bottom, I still have some fabric, and on the side. So I'm going to be able to cut from either one of these, and I'm going to try to use up the smaller pieces first. I need a total of 24 2-inch squares. Both those fabrics are still together. D is only cut out with 1 fat quarter. 24 Ds at 2 inches by 5 inches. 2 final pieces left, E and F. E is a 2.5 inch by a 2 inch An F is a 2.5 inch square. And I'm going to cut this entire piece at 2.5 inches. From those 2.5 inch long strips, I'm going to be able to cut E and F. I have 36 E's, 2.5 inches by 2 inches, and 24 F's, 2.5 inch squares. All my pieces have been cut out, and all of my corresponding labels are right on those pieces. And I do have some leftover fabric. G and H can be put aside for now. We're going to work on half a block at a time. Let's put the block together right on the board. We're going to need a total of 12 blocks. We have 24 of these long D's. We need to divide this in half. We're going to have that one long side with a B up in the corner, the other D attached to it. A in the corner, and then B, we get to divide them up and put them on both sides of that A. The E's and F's have been cut oversized, so they're going to be able to be trimmed down. Divide your F pile, the 2.5 inch squares, in half and place them on the end of those long strips. And they're not going to match, and that's okay. Divide your E pile into 3. And the E's are going to go on the end. So the last row is going to have all of the greens. This is all going to go together, even though some of the pieces don't look like they're going to fit. The first to sew together is A, B, and E. So if you turn it the wrong way, you're going to see that it's not matching. So we need all the 2 inch sides matching together. With those 3 pieces together, press the seams going into the center one. Another B and an E are going to go together. And that E is only going to fit in one direction. Press the seams up towards the smaller block. That last pile of E is going to fit onto this unit. You want the longer piece going towards the longer edge. When you fold it open, you're going to have a big corner here. And press the seam towards that green. We're going to put these 2 units together. Match up the seams and stitch coming right off that corner. Press that seam going towards that single block. 12 of the D pieces, it's going to match right along that side. Press the seam out. Put a 2.5 inch square right onto that bottom. Match up the 2 edges, stitch down, and press that seam going out. We have 3 pieces left. So C onto D. Press C going towards that long piece. We need to put these 2 units together. You will notice that you will have a little bit of a difference here. We're going to take care of that corner when we put this on. So just put these 2 together and stitch all the way down, coming right off. When that seam's been done, press it going out. We need to take those 2.5 inch squares and put them on this end. We don't really even need to trim it. We're going to use the square as a guide. Match that 2.5 inch square up to this edge, which means it's going to hang down a bit. Stitch all the way down, just using the edge of this fabric. It does seem a little odd, but this piece is going to accommodate any seam allowance, and it will be squared all off after. So that is how that little corner looks. And when this is pressed back, it's giving you a big seam allowance here. Put these aside. We need to put G and H together. 8 in each color. We need to sew these 2 units together. We need to find the center of that long piece and match it with that point. We'll have 8 units of each. One stack, press the seam going in one direction. The other stack, press the seam going up. We have 16 of these little hat units, 8 of each color. Take 4 out of one stack and put it aside. These units now need to be stitched together. We need to trim off these points. I'm going to take a long ruler with a 1/4 inch mark, and I'm going to have that 1/4 inch come out from each of these points. I like to do a generous 1/4 inch, which is a 1/4 inch plus maybe 2 threads. And trim. Lay the pieced one over top of the strip one. Match up the cut edge to the edge of the fabric and just making sure that the point is close together. And then stitch down. We now can trim this down to an 8-inch square, and that diagonal line is going to go on that last line that you stitched. Once all the pieces are trimmed down, we need to trim down the 4 last hats. Because we don't have this extra piece on it, we're going to use this measurement to get this measurement. Everybody's seam allowance is a little bit different, so we're going to use the squared up block as a measurement. Place those 2 hats together so those 2 seams match up. And everybody's is going to be slightly different, but this is one way of making it perfectly fit for your block. Carefully place the ruler over top of your square and over top of that little hat and trim off that extra. You'll have a little dog ear on each side. Without removing that square, you can trim off those little dog ears. Now that little hat is going to match this little hat. The 4 hat blocks that did not have anything attached to it is going to go on one side. That same color is going to go opposite. Divide the next 8 blocks in half. And this is the shape that we're going to have. When it's put together, it's going to look like we've spent all this time by mitering all of these corners, but there's no mitering involved. The blocks are going to be sewn together in rows. So flip them over and stitch a 1/4 inch. From there, you're going to put those 2 sides together. And you can finish them any way you want. I like to traditionally do them with a little row of binding. I love the look of the binding. And I've just done an overall butterfly pattern. And when you set this on the table, this is going to go along the edge of the table so the points will all be pointing inside. And this unusual shape gives it a lot of different opportunities. It will look great on a round or a square table. Even a long rectangular table would look nice. And when you're finished dinner and you want to set the table and have a nice quilted centerpiece, it's very easy. You're just going to be able to put your blocks together and you get a nice table topper. And we can still change it to get a couple of more different designs. If you have 2 of them turned sideways, you're going to have these triangular pieces poking out from the table. So you'll be able to see your table in both areas. Turning the next 2 means you'll be able to have a nice big square piece for the center and a big square table topper. It doesn't matter which way it sits, it's going to look nice. We can also have it turn into a table runner. Overlap the center, or you can overlap all of the placemats and overlap again. You have a different look. So 4 placemats in an unusual shape gives you a whole lot of different possibilities. And just think of all of the different fat quarter combinations you could use. And the placemats took 6 fat quarters, 1 yard for the backing, and a 1/2 yard for the binding. In the measurement of the placemats, from point to point, work out to be about 21 inches, and from the point to the flat end, 16 inches. So with these 4 unique shapes, we're able to get a lot of different arrangements for the table. And if we had 6 or more, it would even give us more opportunities. I'd like to thank Annie's Creative Quilters Fabric Club for sending me this fabric to play with. And as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.